Welcome to Two Doulas and a Midwife. I'm Lisa Housen, your host, and I'm joined with Danielle and Sharon Marseille. And we're going to be talking about the first trimester, what to expect, all those feelings, what vitamins to take. In Johannesburg, South Africa, and Danielle and Sharon are also in Johannesburg, South Africa, and we bring you lots of interesting stuff about pregnancy and birth. Danielle, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Always so wonderful to be with you and Sharon. And a big hello to all our listeners and our viewers. I'm also a birth doula based in Johannesburg and very excited to dive into our first trimester of pregnancy. And always exciting to hear these incredible gems of wisdom from our lovely midwife, Sharon. So, Sharon, take it away.
Thank you, Danielle. No pressure there. So I'm a midwife. I've been a midwife for a very long time. Somebody asked me yesterday if I enjoy being a midwife, and I found that a very strange question. Because how can you not enjoy being at the receiving end of a miracle? We get to participate in so few miracles in our lifetime that I was literally gobsmacked, and I was lost for words and didn't know what to say. So, yes, I am a midwife, and I enjoy taking families through an entire pregnancy, preparation for a pregnancy, through the pregnancy, changes coming. And it just helps the family so much to be aware of what change might be coming and how they can prepare for change, not for the birth of a baby, a couple of hours out of your day, but change is coming and change is permanent. And it helps when we are preparing for change to prepare for change, even in our imagination, so that you're ready for anything.
Oh, for sure. Look, we spoke about, conception last time, and it was interesting because you also brought that up, is that preparation is so important, that, really knowing what to expect. And I think as doulas and a midwife, that's what we try and do with our parents, like you were saying. And another thing that we need to delve into is what to expect physically, because I think, a lot of people, they jump into pregnancy and that, but they don't realize their body's going to change that much. They think, oh, just a little baby, I'll have a nice little bump, and then we'll have a baby at the end. But it's a lifelong change now that is happening within your system. And so what are maybe you can delve into this, is what are the first changes that happen, hormonally? What happens to your body when you fall pregnant? Sharon?
Well, I think that always the emotional preparation is paramount, because change in your relationship, change in your physical well-being, in that change in your body image is going to happen. And if in the perfect world we have an opportunity to consider, how am I going to feel about my body changing? How am I going to feel about sharing my body 24 hours a day for 41 weeks? Then it's a good idea to just play with those ideas in your imagination, so that you are more likely to have acceptance over, what do I imagine the first 12 weeks is going to be like? Why do we separate these things into 3 trimesters? And of course the 4th. But if we're looking at 3 trimesters, then we can manage in little chunks. It's much easier to manage in small portions. Yes. Changes that are coming. And I think that's what we're going to be looking at today, isn't it? The first trimester.
Yes. So what physically happens to your body that moment you conceive? So you've had this night, and that sperm is now making its way. Walk us through the process.
Well, I have a series of very beautiful paintings, actually, that show that electric power of conception, and how, if you can imagine being touched by the Creator into that enormous explosion of cell division, It is incredible. And then to consider that women, first of all, very often feel tired. And if you're thinking, well, you're making a human being, and that is tiring, and it's tiring 24 hours a day. And to consider that perhaps today I'm making somebody's liver, and perhaps today I'm making somebody's brain, and that's rather important. And what a responsibility to consider, well, how am I housing this child? So some of the early signs are, of course, breast sensitivity, the missing of a period, so nausea, so many systems in your body, not just one system of pregnancy, but every single system is affected. And how wonderful to be reassured. You can either see that this is nature reassuring you. You're nauseous because your hormones are going crazy, and it's reassuring you. Still pregnant, you're pregnant, you're pregnant, which is also interesting because, of course, the male component of the relationship doesn't have any of that. And so to get him ready for these changes takes more of an effort. She can't forget it day and night, night and day. Constant reminder that hormones are crazy and there's huge things going on in her body. But he needs a gentle reminder as to, well, we need to all be ready for this change that's coming. And how do we plan to do that?
But maybe, Danielle, you can go through the nausea part of it, because you've had first-hand experience of, and just talk about why we get nauseous and how we can help it.
So what I was, what I also like to say to my moms is, especially in that first trimester, your body has been especially if it's your first pregnancy, your body has been existing in one way for such a very long time, and then all of a sudden this little foreign organism embeds itself inside your uterus, and sometimes our bodies take a knock and our bodies are like, hang on, what is happening? This is foreign. And sometimes our bodies react with, I actually need to get this thing out of me. and that's where all this nausea comes from. And as Sharon spoke about, our changing hormones, and we have some moms that react far more sensitively than others. Some moms can develop what is called hyperemesis gravidarum, which is such an intense nausea and vomiting, which can even last throughout the entire pregnancy. And and one of the things that I encourage my moms is to rather have small meals throughout the day, things that aren't going to aggravate that nausea, bland foods. I know it sounds very glamorous, but just to help your body adjust to this little being that's come inside you, and eventually most of us get used to this idea. Our bodies are like, okay, this is our new normal. We're adjusting. Let's make way for this little body to grow. And as Sharon was saying, you are literally growing a human being inside you. And a lot of moms come, oh, is this normal? Is that normal? Should I be feeling this? Because pregnancy is something that we see so naturally every single day. You walk in the supermarket and you can see 5 pregnant women, and it's something that's happening every day. So we tend to forget that it is such an enormous life-changing moment. And one of the first things that I remind my moms is that you are growing an entire human being, and to feel a little bit off is completely normal.
For sure. And are there any supplements that you would suggest, Sharon, to help ease those symptoms?
Well, if we're only looking at nausea, then I do suggest to my mums that the first trimester is about survival. And sometimes it can be very off-putting for somebody who works very hard at keeping her body healthy and strong. She exercises regularly, she has a good diet, and then very suddenly she has abhorrence to the foods that normally keep her well. And so what I say to my mums is, even if you have to survive on white bread and margarine and jam, which to me are the worst things you could possibly eat, um, then that's okay, because you've got to get through the first trimester. And here I have, this is an actual size of a 12-week-old fetus. And you can see that this is how you have developed this person in 12 weeks. Everything is there. Fingers, toes, every single organ, and that's why it's so tiring. But if we're looking more at other signs and symptoms rather than just the nausea part,
Yes.
from a nausea point of view, again, I suggest that they eat something before they get out of bed in the morning. So really what they need is room service. You need somebody to attend to you before you get out, because hypoglycemia will make nausea worse. And the challenge is that
Okay.
when you're nauseous, you start vomiting, and then you're hypoglycemic, and then you feel nauseous, and then you're vomiting, and then you're in this spiral of misery. But if you can fuel the system before you get out of bed, it can help. And even something like a Marie biscuit before you, or a rusk before your feet hit the floor, that can help. A cup of black tea, just to settle things before you start the activity. But other things, other challenges can be, and I wrote down a list: anemia, backache, thrush, constipation, cramps, cystitis, which is a urinary tract infection, fatigue, fluid retention, headache, heartburn, nausea, nosebleeds, restless leg, and stretch marks are all things that would help if we could imagine and then consider, what would we want to do to deal with those? What do I need to do? What do I need to know? Who do I need to go to for advice and information? And that, like we were talking in our last chat, is one of the differences between a midwife and an obstetrician.
Mm.
An obstetrician is a scientist who's going to give you a pill for whatever it perturbs you, and a midwife is going to sit with you for a good period of time and educate you as to why this might be happening and what are your particular solutions in your normal lifestyle, how you normally eat, how we can adjust things for you as an individual to help you best.
And I also think it's with all these things, it's a nice way to get the partners involved. As you were saying, Sharon, the woman is going through so many physical, hormonal, emotional changes, and the dad, he's kind of had his magic 15 seconds of fame, and now all of a sudden, he's he can sometimes feel a bit removed from the whole process. And I think what's really nice is perhaps, he could be in charge of making sure those Marie biscuits are next to his partner's bed, so that when she gets up in the morning, it's already, massaging leg cramps. Leg cramps was something that I suffered with terribly when I was pregnant. And sometimes I just needed my husband to pull my toes back to get those cramps out. And also just, when he goes with his partner to those midwife visits, so that, he can see, okay, it might be hard work getting her everything that she needs, but then he's going to have a much more happier partner, instead of dealing with someone who is constantly complaining and and suffering. He can help ease that suffering and enjoy the pregnancy with her.
And I think it also helps when we have those at your knee moments with your mum to find out what was her pregnancy like. What are you likely to have in store for you? If your mother suffered from morning sickness, and it's such a stupid name because we know it can last 24 hours a day. Um, if your mother had those challenges or had varicose veins, then again, it's a good thing to know. How would you rather avoid? Can you sidestep some of these things? Can you be armed and ready? Or are you just going to wait until that tsunami hits you and then find, oh, look, I'm exactly the same as my mother. She went through this.
Are there any particular hormones that cause the nausea? So we talk, the common words are progesterone, estrogen. Can you talk us through what hormones are released, what's up, what's down, at the beginning stage of pregnancy?
Well, of course, it's estrogen and progesterone because that needs to prevent the menstruation. The menstruation is clearing out the lining of the uterus, and we want to build it now. We want to increase it. We want to keep that baby safe within it. We need hormones that are going to lay down blood vessels and increase the blood flow. We need to be growing that human being. And so I don't really feel that, the labels are people really interested in the science of what is taking place, or do they just want to be aware that this is affecting me and what can I do about it? As Danielle says, with nausea, it really does help to eat frequently. And of course, our natural response to feeling nauseous is don't eat. So
Yes.
if you are eating every 2 hours, then you're unlikely to be hypoglycemic, and then you're more likely to manage through the day. Also, it's a challenge because if you are nauseous and you're vomiting at work and you're trying to keep the pregnancy under wraps, then that's alarming too, isn't it? And suddenly everybody's going to know that you're running off or you've got a bucket under the desk or something.
Shame. These poor women. I thankfully never had any morning sickness in all my pregnancies. So I don't know what I did right, but
well, I think Daniel and I both did. But if headaches are the most common side effect of a new pregnancy, and sometimes it's because you need to have your eyes checked. Lisa and I both wear glasses, and the pressures within your skull, within the eyeball, increases when you're pregnant. And sometimes if you have a glaucoma, or you're not a glaucoma, if you have a weird shaped eyeball, what is that called again? That thing.
astigmatism.
There you go, that thing. Then of course the image is bouncing off separately, differently from what it normally is. Most commonly, headaches are due to dehydration. So it is a good idea, as you were saying in our last chat, to think about having a checkup before you're planning a pregnancy, to have all your systems checked, to go to the dentist. People don't think about going to the dentist when they are newly pregnant or considering a pregnancy. But gum disease increases when you're pregnant. Inflammation of the gums is normal. Bleeding of the gums is normal because of the hormones, because the gums are softening. And so bleeding when you're cleaning your teeth is common and frequent. And it can, again, alarm women. So going to the dentist before a pregnancy, making sure that if you're going to have your amalgam fillings removed, then that's a good time to do it. So you're not releasing mercury into your system when you're pregnant. To have cavities checked, to see your doctor, so that again you're not anemic, you're not heading for a pregnancy and the increase in demand on all systems of your body, that you're entering that situation in this perfect world that we're talking about, in your best possible health. And then we can very often sidestep a lot of the challenges to a pregnancy. But unfortunately, we tend to have our first pregnancies when we're young and stupid. We don't know these things unless our mothers are telling us.
And
Um,
it's quite amazing how, we tend to think of our pregnancies happening, in our midsections, where, as you can see it literally affects your entire body. To think, go have your eyes checked. I mean, it's actually quite amazing. And also, to just to mention again with with that nausea, that if you aren't eating, your baby is going to land up taking nutrients from wherever it can get them from. So if you are depleted, your baby is going to deplete you even more. And so even so, to keep yourself fed and hydrated, even if it's difficult, if it's, the thought of, putting anything into your mouth. So just to keep that in mind, to, just so
for
that
sure.
you can feel better.
We're talking about the
So,
moment of hydration that Danielle's talking about. Hydration, nobody drinks enough fluid. And when we're living in South Africa and we're heading for summer, we should be drinking on average, depending on your status of your body, 4 liters of water. And so, if each person was looking at their own stature and their own P status, we know that to start with, your P is kind of dark in the morning, but it should be a light colored. And if you then are addressing water, not cups of tea, not other things where your body's going to need energy to convert that into water, but if you're drinking water or coconut water, then you're flushing systems out. And remember that your baby is 70% water. And the first part to be developed is the brain, which again is mainly water. And yet we deprive our systems of enough water. So it's very easy for a woman to address her own requirement for water and see what color is my pee on the peeing scale, and am I bringing it to that optimal color as soon as possible during the day. And then yes, I'm going to be peeing every 5 minutes, but you're going to be peeing every 5 minutes whether there's pee to expel or not. So you're going to be going to the loo, so it's much more comfortable, I think, to go to the loo for a good amount than to go to the loo for a teaspoon, and you've got all the effort of going to the loo anyway.
I love that. But I mean, I always had the rule of thumb that for every 10 kilograms that you are, you should be drinking 1 glass of water. And so that's a nice
glass, clear glass,
well,
tot glass.
250 mils, like a cup, So now I want to go on to myths. And we have a lot of myths around food, that I can't eat this, I can't eat that, we're not allowed to do this, we're not allowed to do that, I must eat this. What are some myths? Like, for example, we know that we shouldn't be eating seafood because of all the mercury in the seafood. But there is some seafood that you can eat. So that's not a myth, but what can we be eating? Because the omegas are so fantastic in your seafood that you want to get as much in. What is a good seafood to be eating when you're pregnant?
Can I dive in there? Because
yes, please.
I know that I was going to be thinking, well, shellfish. The reason why we don't eat shellfish when you're pregnant is because prawns are the cockroaches of the sea, and the biggest ones you're going to find are at the end of the sewage pipes. So you don't eat that, not just for the mercury, but you do eat that because you don't want to get food poisoning when you're pregnant. So if we were only just looking at that aspect of what not to eat, it really does come from such a clear place of sensibility, rather than the modern woman sees things as rules and restrictions. And that's unfortunate, because if really look at safety rather, then it's something that you want to participate in, and you want to be aware that this is not going to be good for my baby, and so that's why I'm not going to eat it, rather than the rules are don't lie
Okay.
like this, don't hang curtains. Excuse me. But one of the things that we don't often look at is liver, because the way that we've always said, our mothers have always told us, eat liver when you're pregnant because that's going to prevent you from getting anemic. But what we don't look at is the modern farming of the beast is such that the amount of vitamin A that goes into that liver is so colossal that it can cause harm to a pregnancy. So liver is not a good thing to have. And that means also liver pate, chickens, livers, if you can find a chicken today, and liver sausage that people, again, don't consider. So shellfish is not a good idea, but deep sea fish like cod or hake, those are
Yes.
not the oil fish. Those are not the ones that contain the mercury. Other mercury containing fish, though, that we might not consider are red Roman, yellowtail, tuna, mackerel, sardines, and pilchards. Those are all the mercury containing fish that we want to avoid. But the deep sea fish, those are fine. And yeah, it's a good source of protein everybody worries about. But then also, we don't look at eggs. We need to wipe the shell of an egg before you crack it. And that's so that you're not introducing salmonella into your food. Anything that's going to cause you to have salmonella, not a good idea. So if we're looking at diseases, it's listeriosis, salmonella, and toxoplasmosis. Those are the main things that we're trying to avoid by keeping women on a straight keel in order to prevent complications in their early trimester. And so wiping the shell of an egg, and therefore you need to consider, if I'm going to eat an omelette outside the house, if I'm going out somewhere for breakfast and I'm having an omelette, would they have wiped the shell on the outside before cracking it? What about undercooked eggs? And people think, well, I don't eat raw eggs. But if you have homemade mayonnaise or homemade meringues, are just warmed up raw eggs, aren't they? Mayonnaise, ice cream, homemade ice cream has raw eggs in it. Chocolate mousse, if it's a good one, has raw eggs in it. We need to be careful of soft serve ice cream because the machine itself needs to be so carefully cleaned if it's got real cream in it that you really need to trust the person that has cleaned that machine so that you know that you're going to be safe. Soft yolks, like soft poached eggs or runny boiled egg, is also an undercooked eggs. Your egg should be like foam rubber before you are eating it. Hollandaise sauce has raw eggs in it, and again, it's such a fashionable thing to have hollandaise sauce that I wonder if people consider that. And raw eggs in the licking of the bowl or the spoon when you're making a cake. We get into that habit so often, and we give it to the children to lick that too. That's got raw eggs in it as well. So people, as we're heading for Christmas, of course, royal icing, marzipan, that all contains raw eggs. And so we need to be thinking about maybe stay away from the cake at Christmas. Chicken needs to be cooked right through to the bone if you can find a chicken. And so no pink bit near the bone. And so what I tell my mums is, if you're going to buy a chicken pie, you've got no idea what's under that crust. Makes you think of Terry Pratchett. But if you're going to have a chicken made sandwich from a garage, then of course you would never do that either, because you don't know the level of hygiene, the seriousness of the hygiene that was followed in order to get your chicken between those bits of bread. So if you're going to make a chicken pie, that's entirely different because you're cooking the chicken yourself. You wouldn't buy a rotisserie chicken because you don't know if it was cooked yesterday and cooled down overnight and warmed up again today. So really having pernickety standards around hygiene and food is a very good idea. again, pork, ham contains very often, not always, tapeworm eggs. There are
Yes.
reasons why cultures stay away from ham, and so we have to be careful of how are you going to cook it. Again, if you're cooking it at home and you have a leg of something that you're bringing to enormously high temperatures very quickly, and then you bring it down slowly, that's normally how you would cook a ham. Um, but if you're just buying slices of ham, you don't know what it is containing, and you don't want to get a tapeworm when you're pregnant. Um, and the same thing goes for sushi, that people don't think that today salmon is not a wild beast anymore. It is a farmed creature, and so is trout. And so if we're keeping enormous numbers of salmon in big tanks, then of course we're going to add antibiotics, and we're going to add growth hormone to them to grow them faster. And so as a result, salmon very often contains tapeworm eggs also. And so if you're having sushi, you would have the vegetarian sushi, but it's very important that it's not prepared on the same board as they prepare the salmon on. That if you are vegetarian, then you would like to have those things followed closely, that the board is cleaned and it's, not contaminated with somebody's salmon.
So Sharon,
Yeah.
if we're dealing with a mom who is anemic, or she's she needs to needs more protein in her diet. If we find organic chicken livers, or would you suggest that we look for our iron in our fruits and veggies, in proteins, in more in our fruits and veggies? Or is there, what can our moms do if they have gone for their bloods and they're iron deficient, or they're
Well,
having
it
an
really
issue?
depends on the state of the iron deficiency, doesn't it? Everybody has a different standard. There are doctors who believe, and most doctors will believe, that a hemoglobin of 10 is fine because you're not going to need a blood transfusion. But what I'm looking at as a midwife is taking somebody through a comfortable pregnancy and the challenge of labor. And the challenge of labor is, of course, one of the challenges is bleeding. And so I believe that if you have stores on board, if you have a good hemoglobin, then, and you do have a bleed, you've got enough to
Mm.
manage a bleed and still have the ingredients that you're going to need after the birth to produce good quality milk for your baby. Because again, doctors don't tend to look at the impact of anemia in the postnatal period, because postnatally the ingredients that you are sourcing your milk from is coming from your blood, and if that is scanty, then you're more likely to have a scanty milk, and therefore you're going to have a hungry baby, and therefore you're going to be up all night and you're tired already because you're anemic. And so that's why we look at the picture of anemia. And so I really do promote a good hemoglobin in my mum's. The doctor that I work with laughs at me because my standard is 12, that you can't have, because I'm hoping not to use drugs on you at all. In your
Mm.
labor, in your third stage, also, I'm expecting a normal physiological third stage from you. And so, to that end, you have to be in your healthiest state in order for your body to work the way it is designed to work. And so looking at the protein component, of course, is different. It's the vegetarians who get accused of not having enough protein. Of course, the vegetarians are accused of not having enough heme either in their blood, not enough iron. But I don't find that at all. I find that my vegetarians are the people who think about food combinations and think about the sources of their nutrients. And it's those people who just follow, yes, you could say a lazy man's way of eating, in that it's just habitual. You know, we have mince and potatoes on a Monday and lamb chops on a Tuesday. Um, and they don't necessarily think about their food combinations. So if you're looking at protein, Danielle, then the best source of protein is spirulina. If we're looking at supplements in general, I would advise women to stay away from the synthetic forms of supplements.
Mm.
So not labeling things, not saying this is good and this is bad, but to read ingredients. Now that she is a mother, she's going to be reading ingredients on everything that she buys from a health point of view, from feeding the children and supplementing the family. And so to look at the source of her nutrients, of course, ideally, we want our supplements to come in a natural source that your body can digest as food and not need a food carrier in order to get it into the system. And that's the difference between a synthetic form of something and a natural format of the nutrients. So I get my mums to look at things like green power or green vibrance, things that are natural in barley
Mm.
grass, wheatgrass, chlorella, which is the most effective way of removing heavy metals from your body. It's got spirulina and seaweed in it. So you're getting the fruits from the sea and from the land. Um, and again, when we're looking at organic, if you're looking at organic chicken livers, Danielle, then in South Africa, we don't have any rules and laws about certifying organic, which is an interesting phenomenon.
Very interesting.
If you, with the green power, it is grown in New Zealand organically, and so it is certified organic. And so it can be difficult for us to source things when we think we're doing the best we can. We need to go to a good supplier. I can name things, but
Mm.
I don't think things. But they do just need to be pernickety when it comes to labels and read things carefully and see, am I going to be able to absorb this? You know, there are women who are anemic. We can say they're anemic at 11.5 hemoglobin only because it's under 12, but other women who are anemic at 9, you know, clearly the addressing those two situations are going to be so entirely different that it needs to be, I think, on an individual basis rather than, you know,
For
just take
sure.
iron. You know, in the past, we've
Mm.
always recommended iron for pregnant people and just assumed that all pregnant people are anemic. And then, of course, we discovered that those people who weren't anemic are now constipated because they've got so much iron in the system that it just causes a different kind of problem. So I think that it really helps to address the individual woman, look at her individual blood, see what her needs are, what is her natural diet, and then sort that out so that we can just help her to leave out the uglies. People don't realize that white flour causes you to be anemic. If you're having white flour, you know, rusks made from white flour, quiche bases made from white flour, biscuits, anything with white flour, white rice, white pasta will make you anemic. Black tea will make you anemic. And black tea is not tea without milk. Black tea is Five Roses tea with milk, but that's black
Mm.
tea. You know, green tea is something else, white tea is something else. Um, and so black tea will make you anemic. So just addressing the subtleties of what is anemia and how can I just switch my normal diet to make it comfortable for me, not so that I'm some sort of martyr thinking, oh my goodness, you know, this is so difficult and now I'm miserable and I'm having to eat beans on toast while you're having lamb stew. You know, it just doesn't work that way, does it? It's not good.
Absolutely. Okay, but now going on to that, because it's very interesting that, you immediately check for iron, so you individualize each woman. What are the blood tests that you do at the beginning of a pregnancy? What are we looking for, and what do gynecologists and midwives and that look for, and what are the trigger points to say, okay, this is a high-risk pregnancy, or you're doing great?
Well, one of the first things is, what is your blood group? Because we want to see if you are a rhesus positive mum or a rhesus negative mum. That would make you a higher risk, but not necessarily a high risk if you are rhesus negative. That means you might be O positive or O negative. That is the rhesus component of your blood group. It might be A positive or A negative, AB positive, B positive, B negative. That's your rhesus component, is the negative part of the blood group. And that means that all blood cells are made from protein. And some blood cells have this extra protein, a rhesus protein on the outside of the blood cell. And most of us have that. But some people have not got that protein. And that means that if the baby has the protein and the mother doesn't have the protein, then that is, it's very interesting, because you'd think that a baby is made up of all sorts of protein, and why doesn't her body attack the whole item as an invader? But she doesn't. Her body attacks this particular protein on the baby's blood cells, and that can mean an early or a late miscarriage, because her body is breaking down the baby's blood cells. It can also mean that the baby is born anemic if the baby comes prematurely, can end up in the special care unit. It can mean, if we don't give her a cloaking device to this particular protein, that her next pregnancy is going to be at risk of being miscarried, because she already has armies of antibodies against that particular protein. And so we have something called Risogam or anti-D, and that is an injection that when women have had a miscarriage or a termination, if she is rhesus negative, we don't necessarily advise her then that her next pregnancy could be at risk if she's not having anti-D after such an event. Sometimes, and very commonly, a woman miscarriages her first pregnancy and doesn't even know she was pregnant, and so doesn't know that she should have had anti-D. And that doesn't mean that it's a problem. It just means that we look early in the pregnancy to see what blood group is she, and we offer her anti-D. If we find antibodies against this particular blood component, that we can give her the cloaking device at 28 weeks, at 32 weeks, or in the olden days, we would just check the baby's blood group after the birth, and we still do that now. We check the baby's blood group, and if the baby is rhesus negative, then she doesn't need to have the anti-D, because they are the same blood group. But if the baby is rhesus positive and she is rhesus negative, then we give her the cloaking device after the pregnancy, so that the next pregnancy is safe. So that's one of the first things we're looking at. The next thing we're looking at is her hemoglobin. Is she anemic? Do we need to fortify her? Do we need to build her up so that she can approach the rest of the pregnancy? As a pregnancy develops, then it doesn't get easier on her body. It gets more difficult. And so, of course, we want her to be in the best health at the beginning of a pregnancy, so that she can manage and pull through this pregnancy simply. So we look at her hemoglobin and we address that. And other things are sexually transmitted diseases. So things like hepatitis, gonorrhea, syphilis. These are things that we think only happened in Henry VIII's day, but in actual fact, they are on the increase. And so we do need to look at things that can affect the pregnancy, and HIV, of course, and whether or not she's having treatment for that.
Oh, that's another whole subject about whether babies would be born with that. But all of these factors are tested early on and treated pretty successfully to carry on the pregnancy healthily. Okay, excellent. Yeah. And then, just summing up that first trimester, I know you're very pro-vegetarian, but a lot of women obviously aren't going to be. Do you still...
Vegetarian women, I'm pro-choice. Whatever you want to eat, however you live, that's your thing.
But you do give your mom suggestions on good meat. And
we have an organic emporium here, and Debbie, who runs it, she goes to farms and she sources good, proper, certified organic food, and she does a very nice newsletter also.
Going on to sonograms, people, moms go in there, they want to have that first little scan and see what's going on. How do we get around not having more scans? So that first one, fine, we have that first one, you see the pregnancies there, all the rest. What are your thoughts on sonograms?
Oh dear.
I know.
There is a place for science, and we're very grateful for modern science. And yes, it is a joy for a woman to see that miracle taking place in her body. I find on one hand, it can be insulting for a woman who knows her cycle and knows when she conceived a baby to be told that she's wrong. That was not the situation. I need to do a scan so that I can tell you when this baby is coming. And yes, it is useful to have a dating scan for some people, but ideally you would like to have the baby fully formed so that you can see that little miracle fully formed. And here's a bundle of cells, or here's part of a human being. So yes, it is such a choice thing. When you have a high risk pregnancy, then of course you want to see that everything is developing normally, and those are different needs to have early scans. But if you are a healthy woman and this was a planned pregnancy and you know what's going on, then it's a nice thing to have your first scan around about 12 weeks. People say until the hearing is developing. If you consider the bombardment of these ultrasonic waves to a baby, it is a huge invasion into the baby's space. On one hand, we like to say to the mother, oh, look, your baby is so busy. This is a really active child you have here. But we're bombarding them with this beam of brrr, and they do say that it is the equivalent of the sound of a train coming into an underground tunnel that the baby is experiencing. So if we can keep that to a minimum, then that's fair enough. And if you are in Europe, you are offered 2 scans. The first dating, or that miracle of here is your baby, and this is a healthy skeleton that we're looking at. We're looking for signs of Down syndrome and spina bifida, so that again we can guide a woman and her family to other tests that are available should it be suspected that the baby is not fully healthy. And that's a good reason to have an early scan. And then you're looking at a 20-week scan, which is an important scan because then we're looking at the functionality of the internal organs. We're looking to see the baby has 2 kidneys, 1 bladder, 4 chambers of a heart, 2 hemispheres of a brain. And again, that this is confirmed at the end of this pregnancy, we are going to be receiving a healthy individual. If the baby is found to only have 1 kidney, then we're just keeping a close eye on them. And we know that pediatricians are going to follow up more closely after the birth and talking to the mums about choices, screening tests, treatment that might be necessary. If the baby is discovered to have possible signs of Down syndrome, then again, it's an opportunity for parents either to look at support systems in their neighborhood, what facilities are available for a child with special needs, alerting the family the fact that we're going to be having a child with special needs. So again, they have their support groups that grannies can go to, and find out, what does this mean to me? How can I best support a child like that? Or if they were to feel that this is a child that they can not support, then what are their options and what would they need to do about that? And how do they get support through making very difficult decisions one way or the other? And then we normally have a 36-week scan so that we can see the well-being of the placenta. In that, first pregnancies normally go post dates. It is very common to go beyond 41 weeks, but not far. Like term plus 10 is an accepted time to have your first baby on. And so we want to know, what is the health of this placenta? If the placenta is not healthy, then you're not going to maintain a healthy pregnancy beyond your dates. And so again, information to the couple, to the family, is important. That calcium, of course, is an interesting component if we're looking at supplements, and how if you're having a synthetic form of calcium, it can very often calcify the placenta. And so at 36 weeks, it can be discovered that the placenta has calcified, and therefore women are directed to induction. But if you are eating your healthy diet and you're having natural supplements and you're having a good balance of calcium, zinc, magnesium, potassium, then your placenta is likely to be seen as a healthy organ at 36 weeks, and that we can reassure you, when and if you go post dates, this placenta is going to see you through that in a very healthy manner, and you don't have anything to worry about. We're looking at how much amniotic fluid is there at term 36 weeks, and again, hopefully just celebrating the fact that this is a great pregnancy, totally healthy, nothing to worry about here, and let's wait for you to go into labor naturally.
That is that it's been very beneficial. However, we are concerned about the radiation, if you want to call it, the sound waves, the light waves that are going through to the baby. And so you would suggest just those 3 scans.
Well, those are the most important ones. In South Africa, you have a private obstetrician, and so the average woman has an average of 13 scans during her pregnancy.
Wow.
And if it is your method to go and have a scan every time you're seeing a doctor, of course it's more convenient for a doctor, because that is 5 minutes. Look, I can just look at the monitor, there's a baby, everything's fine, yes, still healthy, thank you for coming, cheerio. Instead of spending time with a woman and palpating and seeing, how is this baby lying? Is this baby breech? Is this baby cephalic? Are we growing on track? Is there plenty of amniotic fluid? Those are things that we've always done with our hands in the past.
Yes.
And so
as a midwife,
the average South African woman should think about, if you're going to have 13 invasive scans and possibly 10 of those are not necessary, then that's something to think about. But if there is a bleed in the pregnancy, if we're alarmed to the fact there could be a low-lying placenta here, then that's a wonderful skill at science that we have in order to look within the uterus to find out, where is the placenta lying? Is there something that we need to be alarmed about here? That if the midwife perceives that this baby is breached, then yes, we can confirm that with a scan. And we can sometimes see that there's a cord involvement. We can't see that the cord is round the neck at any time. We only see this partial cord against the neck or cord on the shoulder. We can't see if it's 360 degrees around a neck. See that, there is a blood flow through a cord at a particular part of a baby. We can't also see how long the cord is, if it's a short cord, if it's a long cord and it's around the neck. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a problem. But those are reasons and indications that we use the scanning machine for. Also, if we perceive that there's twins, we want to see how they're lying, what's going on.
So as a midwife, would you do the scans yourself or do you refer?
No, I am merely a midwife. I don't do the scans. Some midwives do the scans. I like to have the champion of scanning. I refer my mums to either an embryologist, an in vitro specialist, and of course we have one of those at Oxford Road who is a champion ultrasonographer. And the obstetricians, when you refer, because if you're seeing a midwife, then you're normally only seeing the obstetrician twice in your pregnancy. You see him at 28 weeks and you see him again at 36 weeks. And so if the midwife was concerned about something before then, clearly she's working in partnership with the ultrasonographer, and if there is something that is a concern, then we refer to the obstetrician sooner. Yeah, and it is a team effort. I am the midwife in the team, and the ultrasonographer is doing her thing. And if she was concerned about anything, again, she's getting in touch with the doctor that I work with also. And, we're working together to take this woman through a healthy pregnancy.
Yes, wonderful. Because it really is a team effort to get everybody involved for the healthiest outcome. So Danielle, what is your takeaway from today?
Yeah, so it's I always that every mom should be able to have that wow moment when she discovers that she's pregnant, and also to find support if it is like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. But just to really, that first trimester, I feel just that extra bit of TLC. Unfortunately, not all of our moms will have a partner, who is present all the time to help, and I'm just I'm such an advocate for every human to have a network. So whichever, how, wherever you are in your life, to find your network, and so that, especially you're going through this tough, first trimester, to find your person, whether it is your mom, whether it is a friend who's going through something similar, or just pour your heart out to your midwife or your doula, because that is what we're here for, to just give you that, that extra support. So, so that you can get through, and we'll talk about our second trimester next time, which is often referred to as the honeymoon trimester, which we'll discuss why. But yes, so thank you again, Lisa and Sharon, for such an informative chat.
Yes, thank you, ladies. That was really lots of food for thought there, and I think we're going to touch a lot on this again in our second trimester, and coming back again to the first trimester, because I think there's so many components to it that make for a healthy pregnancy. So thanks so much, Sharon, for all your info today. And we will see you at the next one. Have a lovely day. Thanks for all the viewers and listeners, and really appreciate the support. Go well.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.